Alright, in this video we're going to be talking about why reading is so essential in the modern day. And to start off, I want to let you know the 5 main reasons why. First, reading makes you more interested. Along with that, reading makes you a better communicator, it improves your eyes, it teaches you how to live, and last but not least, it's an improvement skill. What does that mean? We'll touch up on that later on in the video. But first, reading makes you interested. How does it make you interested? And I want to give an example of how it just does that. First, reading is something that it draws attention towards you. When you're reading a book, you're in a cafe just reading something, somebody might want to walk up to you and say, hey, what's the title on your book? What are you reading? Whatever it says. And whether they read it or not, it doesn't really matter. They just want to start a conversation with you. They want to find interest in what you're doing. For instance, this book called The Go-Giver. When I was talking to one of my friends recently, a random person ran up, they walked up to me and asked, hey, what's that book about? And this happens a lot, so I just answered them nicely. I was like, oh, this book is called The Go-Giver. It's about a positive way, or to have a positive outlook on sales and reaching out to people. It'd be like the opposite of the 48 laws of power if it wasn't like negative psychology. It's about giving more value than you get, and you end up receiving a lot more in life because of that. Now that's just one common example of how reading makes you more interesting. Another reason why reading makes you more interesting is because when you read, you add more to yourself. Every conversation hinges on the fact that you're talking about your life experiences. All you can talk about is the experiences that you have in life and what you know within the content of your knowledge. But when you read books, you really get to expand that, and here's why. Because each and every author, they're basically having a conversation with you about the things that they know. They're expanding their knowledge to you. So when you read a book, they're imparting that knowledge to you and you're getting that as well, you're receiving that. Now when you read a book, you might skim over certain things, you might not fully remember certain things. I know for certain I don't, I'm not an expert reader. But the fact of the matter is that you read it and you're gonna remember a lot of those things. It might not be all, it might not be 50 or even 20%, but you're still gonna add that little 10% of the book to yourself. And that's a lot. Let's do the math right now. Out of 500 pages in a book, you read a whole Harry Potter book, or you read all of the 48 Laws of Power. Robert Greene makes long books, by the way. But you read all of those, let's say it's 500. That 10% amounts to 50 pages, 50 full pages that you remember from heart. Might not be all in a sequence, but you remember at least 50 out of 500 of those pages. That's a lot of words. You have about 250 words on each and every page, meaning that 50 times 250, you've added more than, let's say, I'm doing the math right now, you've added more than 20,000 words of information to your persona, to your knowledge. You have about 20,000 more words you could talk about now, and that's important. So that's the last way that reading makes you a more interesting person. It just adds more to you as a character. Next up after that is how reading makes you a better communicator. And how does reading do that per se? First, you have the obvious answer. By reading books that talk specifically about communication. I know the first one, and one for me, one of my favorites is How to Win Friends and Influence People by, not Andrew Carnegie, by Dale Carnegie. What the book talks about is how you inspire people necessarily by being just genuine and authentic. More than necessarily being like a nice person, you're just being yourself. You're just getting to the point of whatever it is. You come up to somebody with a specific intention and you speak on it right away after you introduce yourself. If I see somebody and they look like they're a business person, they would be a good connection to make. I say, hey, how are you doing? I notice you have business attire on, man. Ask what career you're in, something like that. If you see a girl that's like interesting, like you know exactly what you're there for, you know, you go up, you're nice, you introduce yourself, but then right after that it's like, hey, you look good, I want to talk to you. What do you think we can go on a date? You know, it's that simple. You're not tiptoeing around the subject. You're being authentic, you're being yourself. You're not showing a character until the end when you want to show who you really are. You're being yourself right away. And that's one of the main things that the book talks about. That's one of the main things. Now, second, about why reading makes you a better communicator, this is because of the things that you learn while reading inherently. Like while you're reading, naturally your brain is gonna have to adjust. There's gonna be certain words you don't understand, certain processes you can't like use to understand the book, and there's certain grammatical things, like simple things you learn in like grade school that you probably missed in grade school. I know this happens to me a lot. I read certain books that have like different types of grammar, and I'll genuinely have to learn how to read the book just to read the book. I can give a couple of examples. First one, most evidently being the Bible, King James Version. And that one they talk like it's old British. It's extremely hard to understand that. Let's not let my book fly right now. It's hard to understand it. You genuinely have to learn how to do those certain things. But after you come out of that, reading the pages of those books, and you start talking to people, you notice in like simple things, there's certain ways that you talk differently. Like not like you're gonna be talking like Shakespeare after reading it, but like when I say certain different vocabulary words that you learn from the book that you just didn't have in your toolkit before. That's one of the other ways that reading improves your conversation. Now, the next thing, this ties directly into this actually. It's how reading improves your eyes. It exercises your eyes. One of the main things that does it. And first and foremost, let's get to exactly how it correlates with that. Because when you're reading, first thing you're doing is you're improving the eye to brain connection. Just like hand-eye coordination, there's a connection between your eyes and your brain directly. I believe it's the most connected organ to your brain, actually, considering it's right there. And how this does that is that when you're looking at things, when you're looking at the words on the page, first you have to receive it through your eyes. But then it has to also connect to your brain through the certain connections that are in between it. The more and more that you read, the faster that gets. The faster those connections and those electrical currents could go through the synapses between your eyes and your brain. Now, when you're doing this, it doesn't necessarily just go from book reading and it's just only that. This does translate to other things as well. When you read and you have to immediately understand exactly what you're looking at, that translates to when you're speaking to people and you have to immediately understand what they're saying. But when you're looking at a situation, maybe a football's flying your way, you have to immediately assess the situation and like catch the football, just like you would when you're immediately reading a book and you have to understand the word. That process goes by much faster the faster you begin to read. Now the next way that reading improves your vision and your eyes per se is that it improves certain aspects of it, like direct and peripheral vision. Now how it improves direct vision, I can't really speak too much on that, but peripheral vision, one thing I was learning in this book I read called How to Read, literally How to Read Faster. I forget the author's name, his first name was Cam. But in the book, it talks about when you read, you mainly want to use your peripheral vision when you want to like not skim through the pages, but read entire blocks of text. Because when you read, it's not necessarily just going to be word for word or whatnot. You want to also read multiple words at a time. There's different strategies for this, like blocking per se, like just reading the whole line one by one. In other ways, I can't really elaborate on it too well. But the better your peripheral vision gets, the better you get at reading, and vice versa. Now, the next topic will be how reading also teaches you how to live. This one is going to connect with the first thing that I was saying about how it makes you more interesting. And that's directly because, going back to what I was saying, when you read, you get another expansion of yourself through another person. When you read about somebody, or it could just be anything, the fact that there's an author behind it, they have to impart something that they know onto you. And this is exactly how reading teaches you how to live. When you read specific books on, it could be any type of specialization, like what I was just telling you about, How to Read Faster by Cam. That book was an aspect that made it so that I'm not wasting as much, not necessarily wasting, but not using as much of my time in the day on reading. Because I learned certain skills for me to read faster and attain knowledge faster. And what that book really taught me most importantly was how to sort through the important information and the information that's not as important to me at the moment. Now when you read specific books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, 48 Laws of Power, or just whatever it might be, self-improvement books or anything, they all directly correlate to teaching you how to live. Now other books, any books could do this, a similar way just because there's an author behind it. They're gonna be showing you, they're gonna be teaching you like just the underlying tones of how they live, and they're gonna express that through the book subconsciously. Now, without getting too far from the topic, let's move to the next one, and that is that reading is an improvement skill. Last and least, reading is an improvement skill. And what does this mean? This means that the more you read, the better you get at reading. It's one of those things that the more you do it, the better you get at it. Like playing a sport, like exercising, like learning something. Reading is the same way. Because at first I know what's the word? You just might not be confident in yourself when you first start out or first get the idea to read. Like one of your friends might read and they'll tell you to read too. And you think, I don't like reading. That's not my way of getting information. I like watching YouTube videos, or I like watching movies, or I just like talking to people. That's absolutely okay. That's perfectly normal. But the fact is that reading is just a different way of getting information. Just like how talking to people might be one thing, how listening to audiobooks might be one thing, and how just watching TV might be another thing. Reading is another avenue. And with that, it's going to have different things that pertain to it. So, going back to what I was saying, that reading is an improvement skill, you can always start out with anything. And don't forget, you can start at any time. I know for me, I started with a fantasy book that was similar to Harry Potter, but not the exact same. There was this book called The Alchemist. I forget the author's name, but it was basically about this one dude who made potions and whatnot to fight, and that series is extended from one to another. I remember when I first started reading it, I got like 30 pages in, and I got bored immediately after. I came back to it a month later because my grandma had begged me. She begged that I would not complete the book. That was one thing that drove me to read the book to completion. So I ended up reading it more. About 100 pages in, I'm still bored. About 150 pages in, I'm still bored. It's a 300-page book. I've gotten halfway in, and I'm still bored. And then, once I hit that 175 mark, or that 200 mark, I find something that's finally interesting to me. And the book starts to connect more and more. And by the end of the book, I'm seeing at the end of it that there's 5 more books in the series. And I'm like, you know what? I might as well try another one. So I go and try the second book, I like it. I try the third one, I like that one too. I'm already halfway in, I have to complete the series. I complete the whole series. And by this time, I've gotten so enthusiastic to read that I'm mad that I can't read any more of the book. So instead of that, I say, you know what, it's enough of the fantasy, let's move on to something else. And from then on, I'll start moving on to self-improvement books, to science fiction books, to educational books, and whatnot. And the same thing can happen for you. I know for a lot of people, they're starting out reading manga, comic books. It could literally be anything at all. You could read online books, you could listen to audiobooks. So as long as you get that spark, you get to inflame it and start something new. Now, if you watch this video from start to finish, I genuinely just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. And if you like it, you know, leave a like, subscribe, you know, that helps out. And if you want to go the extra mile, leave a comment saying what books you've read or what books you plan to read. And all in all, that's it. I hope you have a good day.